What's up, folks? I read a post. I read a post here a couple minutes ago from somebody that I know. Um, the person whose post I was just reading, dude I went to church with, right? Um, some years ago. So me and this guy, I went to church with this guy. We were both youth at this very same church, and I was reading this post, and I got a little annoyed, and I ended up leaving a comment on it. So I guess I just, I look to y'all to vent too. But I read this post, and the post says, hang on. So as I read the gentleman's post, and the gentleman's post, it basically referred to people as cowards and things like that, right? But I want you guys to, it says, the gentleman's post, like I said, I went to church with this dude. It's a public post. If you search these words, you'll find it. Like I said, I went to church with the dude. He wrote this. He said, let's be honest for a second. I don't want to see people posting prayers for the victims today or this week while people mourn. And then after a little time has passed, those same people supporting this president who has been spewing his hateful, negative, and racist rhetoric ever since he's been in the White House. So many of us have been saying since the beginning that his words and attitude towards people of color is going to be trouble. It's a shame that innocent people are dying in our country. Now, this isn't my word. Somebody else wrote this. He says, there are cowards everywhere, not only these gunmen that people refuse to call terrorists from our own country. I hate to break it to you, but if you are also supporting hate speech, bigotry, and discrimination, you are a coward as well. This is good news. You don't have to be a coward. Start listening and actually pay attention to what is going on around you. The only way that we make this nation better is for us to come together regardless of affiliation and actually become a community. Love is and always will be the answer. Now, here's the problem. This is something, and I left a comment on here, and again, and I hope you all hear my frustration. I left a comment here because we have this thing called the First Amendment here in America. And the First Amendment gives people, even as the Supreme Court said, even jerks, okay? And I will venture to say even people who are not knowledgeable, people who are not intelligent, and they have the ability to say things that are just so far from the truth that it's not even funny. So I'm gonna explain to you some of my frustrations. One of the main assumptions here that's here, like when you read this, is that somehow or another, this current president is to blame for, I don't know, maybe the mass shootings that took place, right? Or for maybe even racial tensions in this country. And this is one of the problems that I see, that we have this line that we have with free speech, right? People are allowed to spew nonsense rhetoric. And while the gentleman is critical of nonsense rhetoric, he's repeating nonsense rhetoric. Now, if anybody got a chance to read the El Paso mass murderers manifesto, he states very clearly that his views predate Donald Trump and the Donald Trump election. Okay, but it has not stopped low information people from repeating that this is the cause of it. And so, if you want to know the truth about it, spewing in unintelligent nonsense and unintelligent rhetoric, right? That is the cause of a lot of the sort of unrest that we have going on. That sort of stuff right there. Now, did you just blame the quote unquote president for this sort of rhetoric, right? There's a shooting that took place. Did you tie the president in with that with no connection? Okay, so that's the El Paso shooter. The shooter over in Ohio is somebody who's a registered Democrat. It's a registered Democrat. Somebody who, if you go onto his Twitter page, the Washington Post reported this, Heavy.com reported this, okay? Even Breitbart News. Now, so there you have the Washington Times, rather. The Washington Times, liberal news media, liberal-leaning news media, says that this person is a Democrat who shared AOC sort of stuff, right? Who shared stuff about concentration camps. Just before that, we had somebody who went and tried to blow up an ICE facility, right? The person wanted to blow up an ICE facility, and he said because of the concentration camp. After he was done, the big leftist Sean King shared this dude's information on his Twitter page, called him a martyr, and said that we needed to do things just like this to liberate people from what he called, again, concentration camps, okay? Exactly. Brother Julius, right on the head. He said, They're hard to convince. If they see it on TV, it must be so. So here's the thing. News One, the news organization owned by BET, spewed it and said, it says, this guy was a Trump supporter. Hey, listen, I heard people say that the guy's Facebook page, he shared an image that was going around and said Trump. It was like spelled out in guns. These weren't his guns, but allegedly this is on his page. Regardless of the fact, you guys are losing sight of something here. The person has a heart issue, okay? They have a heart condition, okay? This is the depravity of the human condition, okay? That's what this is. This is a human condition apart from God. That's what this is. This is an evil, this is a person with an evil and a dark heart. That's what the problem is. You guys want to blame someone who came in after the fact. And then it's almost as if, you know, we didn't have, I don't know, more deaths under the previous presidency, under President Obama. So there are some, under the presidency of Barack Obama, there's some numbers according to the LA Times. The deadliest mass shootings, especially in recent times, 236 people dead, 257 people injured. The deadliest mass shooting took place under the previous administration. But if Donald Trump is the cause, how could that be? How could there have been these same sort of things beforehand? How do you dismiss the sorts of activities that took place under the other administrations, right? I don't care if you're talking about George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, H.W. Bush, Reagan, Lyndon Johnson, so on and so forth, right? How do you get past this? How do you get past this stuff, right? And then let me tell you some of the other frustrations that I have with this whole post, which I'm going to call an idiotic post. Okay. Here, so it says, so many of us have been saying since the beginning that his words and attitude towards people of color is going to be trouble. That's what you're linking to this shooting. Here's one of the problems with the person who posted this, and with even some of the people who commented, right? I've been critical of this person who posted this and the people who have commented on the post, because during the previous administration, these particular gentlemen did a whole lot to stir racial tensions in right here in my own community. I took pictures of the protests that they organized here in Fresno on the corner of Shaw and Blackstone. I took pictures of the rhetoric that was being spewed out there, right, towards white people, police officers, the sort of hate that they were teaching in churches. Okay, they had entire demonstrations when you went into churches right here in this city where everybody's in church in a hoodie, right? And they're talking about they're taking these stands against racism. Now, did they wait to see what the facts of the case were when they came out? Of course not. But they went on talking about how there were racist motivations. The George Zimmerman, Michael Brown incident got grouped in with white police shootings. And it didn't matter that George Zimmerman is not a white police officer. That didn't matter. With the Michael Brown officer Darren Wilson shooting, it was said that this was evidence of racism. I saw one of the dudes who commented on it, who was a pastor, talking about how it was obviously racist. That Michael Brown's body was still in the street. Now, if you talk to anybody who's a paramedic, they tell you that when a person's dead and this is an active crime scene, they don't go in touching anything because you don't want to contaminate the evidence. But again, it did not stop the person from bearing false witness. And I made a whole post about it. It's on Political Blackout, which you can read my whole post about it, because you're just bearing false witness at this point. And for a Christian pastor, this is a problem. You're bearing false witness. It's a violation of the 10 Commandments. One of the 10 Commandments, breaking the whole of the commandments, actually. So, but it didn't stop him from saying that there were racist motivations. It didn't stop this person from saying that there was racist motivations for the paramedics or for police not covering up the person's body before you could get in there and collect evidence, take pictures, things like that. The paramedics got there, they left the scene as is. Nobody touched anything until crime scene investigators could get in there. Okay, and it didn't stop them from having entire demonstrations in church where they went in there to talk about white supremacy and white supremacy being a problem for something that had no racist motivations. These very same people, the people I'm talking about who made this post, who were on this post, some of these people were on there talking about the video was fake, that it didn't matter that a robbery occurred ahead of time, that you still didn't have to shoot the person. And again, you want to talk about people who are spurring racial hatred and contention, things like that in this country, is you. You're doing it. You're doing it. You spin this stuff. You haven't waited for any facts. You don't even wait to see what the person's stated intent was. You don't wait for it. So we're not able to call out everybody fairly, depending on what they have themselves said the motivation was. You're just going to make it up. The person is one color. The person that who fell victim to whatever it is another color. It's automatically racial intent. Every other nuance to the side. All of the facts be damned. It's just out the window. Christian says people only focus on the text shooting because it's the one that suits the narrative. Correct, Christian. The Antifa sympathizer in the Ohio shooting, that gentleman right there does not fit the narrative because he's a Democrat. Okay, the person who was planning to blow up an ICE facility, okay, that person is a Democrat who was a big fan of everybody on the Democrat side, right? And so you can't focus on the common issue, the thing that says that there's a problem with the human condition. You can't focus there. You have to say that there's a racial issue. Could be a racial issue. It could be. That could be the way that this sort of thing is manifested, right? And then in which case, if that's the case, call it out. Everybody can stand in condemnation of it. Everybody can stand in condemnation of it, okay? I don't know a reasonable person who's not going to say that somebody attacking somebody specifically based on their race is not a problem. I don't know one person who's reasonable who's not going to do that. No person outside of an insane asylum that I know. John McClinton says, are you able to identify the spirit that actuated the shooter and the others, regardless of politics? If you say Lucifer, I'll frown. I'm looking for eschatological acumen, which would be timely today. I don't know that we have the time to get all into that, Mr. John, but here's what I'll say. Like I said, I'll say that there's an issue with the human condition. I'm a believer of total depravity. There's an issue with man's heart that causes him to act out and lash out in these ways. These people, they have just a desire, a thirst for blood. Okay, you just want to hurt and harm people, and everybody has some sort of issue, some sort of hang-up. Manifests itself in different ways. Sometimes people have something that's far less socially acceptable. Some people carry their stuff out through sexual deviance, right? And then we see all these slut walks and all that kind of stuff, right? Other people desire that they want the sort of freedom to be able to kill their children. Okay, exactly. Jason says they don't associate Elizabeth Warren with the Ohio shooter. He says why not? And that's the question. I have no idea why. I have no idea why they don't do so, because this person certainly linked themselves up with them. The shooter in Texas had a manifesto who says my views on these things, on immigration and on automation, his view of corporations, things like that. These things predate Donald Trump or even his election, but yet Donald Trump is to blame for this sort of stuff. This is sheer and utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Okay, but it won't stop people who are low information. And this thing, I wish with all my might, okay, that what we could do is that I wish we could bring back these tests that make sure that you understand just a little bit how politics works before you can cast a vote anywhere. I would do it. I'd be in support of it. I'd be in support of it because I don't believe that an uninformed populace is what the founders ever had in mind. I don't believe so. Okay, and so you have people who are spreading this kind of nonsense everywhere. They're spreading it everywhere. These are people who have followings, and they'll say it. And they'll say it without any shred of proof. And people say, oh my God, amen. Like you should have seen the amens on the post. On the post that I'm reading, that says that these shooters, right, at the time that he posted this, there were 2 shootings that just happened. One of which is a Democrat. That's Donald Trump is to blame for that. He's to blame for the Democrat shooting something up. Okay. Does this mean then that Obama was to blame if there was a single racial shooting that took place during his presidency? No, you would put that on the person who did the shooting. Say, no, that person is the problem. That person is the problem. Did the shooter list Donald Trump as his motivation, I wonder? No, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. He said the exact opposite. It says some just want to, at least it says some just want to do something to be infamous. The liberal media is driving this and calling Trump a racist since he started running. Now, there's the thing. Now, here's the thing. Bill Maher and other, there were news publications and everything that went out that talked about how this problem of just calling everyone a racist actually led to the presidency, to the election of Donald Trump. Why? Because even Bill Maher talked about how when Mitt Romney ran, he said Mitt Romney was a reasonable man that I disagreed with. But guess what? When somebody's a Republican, you paint that person as a racist. Now, these were liberal news publications, newspaper articles and everything that talked about how it is that every time a person came up, you just treated the person as a racist, which again, is anybody on the left going to take credit for stoking the racial flames? Like when you go about, right, and you have like people in your wing and in your party that denounce every white person as either a racist or racist sympathizer or somebody who benefits from racism with no connection whatsoever, because you're an intersectionality supporter, that you believe that every person who belongs to any particular class is either a victim or or a conqueror based on the characteristics that he possesses, if they're in like kind of the person who possesses these other characteristics, then he automatically either gets the failures or the successes. Okay, he either gets the hardships or the successes of this particular group, whether or not he himself, respectively, has benefited in any way, shape, or form. If you belong to this class right here, then you've automatically benefited. And so people are not going to blame intersectionality, right? Intersectionality, this nonsense that says, if I'm Black, for example, I automatically am a part of whatever it is that you're addressing. If the issue is oppression, me being Black, regardless of my own particular life, regardless of my own particular struggle, you just believe that I automatically fall into the category. And then ipso facto, whoever it is part of whatever white class, you automatically are an oppressor. You automatically have done something simply because you're part of that very same class of people. And it doesn't matter if I myself have personally never experienced those things, okay? What matters is that you belong to the class. And so then by and large, you can say then that men, this intersectionality trash, any woman that wants to come up and call me an oppressor because I'm a male can do so. You know why? Because she's a woman, and she can say historically, women didn't have the right to vote, and women couldn't do this, and women couldn't do that, and women were barred from going into the field of law, or whatever it is. She can say, and you're a man, and you would have had these abilities because you have a penis. And so then she can call me her oppressor. So I don't buy intersectionality trash whatsoever. Every person in every specific situation is judged upon its own merits. So I don't do it. Okay. And then there's this, which something that Elise mentions right here in the comments. There is something that I guess I sincerely don't understand. I grew up in West Fresno. We had things that would be classified. FBI's definition of mass shooting says 4 or more people. Other organizations use different numbers. There's no specific federal definition of a mass shooting. But I can tell you that there were mass shootings on multiple occasions in neighborhoods that I grew up in. And multiple people hit, multiple people shot, okay? Multiple people who were just shot at, house parties shot up, okay? Victims everywhere, right? But certain things just don't garner national attention. And then you have people who are talking about this issue, right? And claiming to be sensitive to the issue and claiming to want to do something about mass shooting and then ignoring it completely when the shooter does not fit a certain criteria. As Teddy, who I've termed village idiot on my page, love Teddy, but me and Teddy, we throw shots at each other. Teddy was on my page talking about that the motivation makes a difference. And so then if a person, for example, came to a neighborhood I grew up in and he shot 4 people, right? Teddy doesn't particularly care about that one as much. What matters, as long as a person did not have racial intent when they did it, then that's better somehow. That is dumb. That's dumb. It's so dumb. Doesn't make any sense, okay? If the issue is mass shootings, then we approach the subject of mass shootings and figure out, okay, what's the commonality here? And you can say, okay, well, hey, there's a commonality here. Criminals and guns don't mix. I would say then what we need to do is we need to change certain legislation. I would say, for example, when you catch a criminal with a gun, like we have here in California, right, where a person can be arrested for a gun crime and then released from the county jail on his own recognizance, right, because it's listed as a nonviolent felony, and he can be released out, and he can be arrested again for another gun charge, be taken right back to county jail while he awaits adjudication for the very first one, released again. I know a guy in a 7-day period had been arrested 5 times for weapons possession, being a felon in possession of a firearm, and it continued to let you out. Again, I'm not even the first person to bring this up. Jadakiss, in his song Why, addressed this very same issue before I did. You would get life for a murder, you would get 8 months for a burner, okay? And so we have shootings take place all the time. There's mass shootings that take place all the time in the city of Chicago. They take place in inner cities all the time. We talk about how we have violent weekends pretty much all over the place, okay? And yet and still, certain ones don't get the sort of media attention because the liberal media that's controlling the media is not bringing focus to these. You cannot talk about issues that go on in inner cities. So my communities that can continue having mass shootings there, the laws that they pass will never address these issues in my community, and yet and still they can continue to occur. And so it's funny. So he says, what do you think about statistics from the FBI that most terror plots foiled are from white supremacists? I keep hearing about far-right white supremacists are huge risks, yet their plots always seem to get foiled by intelligence agencies, but the terrorists get past their intelligence. Obviously conspiracy on my part, but I don't believe them. Well, so here's what I say. I know that, for example, the KKK went from, I think, 5 million to about 2,000 people after the Reconstruction era. And so what you have is a lot of times is the FBI keeps a lot of focus on white supremacist groups. They have a lot of focus on white supremacist groups. The KKK, in spite of what the heck that people who are here in my country, Christian is he's in the UK, so But people who are here in my country, they say that white supremacists are not labeled as terrorists, in which case that's false. They were labeled as terrorists back in the 1800s, back during the Reconstruction era. Okay, the KKK was labeled as terrorist organizations. People in the organization were tried for terrorism for their KKK actions. Okay, the Republicans came up very strongly against the KKK, tried them as terrorists. This is a fact. But the FBI and these organizations, they have a lot of these things. They have people sitting in these organizations who are undercover, who work in these organizations. This is something that they've been very, that they were vocal about in the past. That no, listen, we keep an eye on these sorts of people. They have all sorts of websites, things you can go to where you can. So it's easier to monitor those people. Says when you keep calling white men animals, evil. Exactly. See, so Jason understands my point. So you guys spend a lot of time attacking a particular race, telling them that they're all benefactors of race, that you guys have all supported racism, white supremacy, that you're a supporter of this. And unless you give me your money and all your stuff and all this kind of stuff like this, then you're a supporter. Then you're in support of white supremacy. And that like I've seen headlines that said things like all white people are racist. And again, let me be very clear. I don't care one shred about a white supremacist. I don't sympathize with you at all. I could care less about any of your racial sympathies. It doesn't make me a bit of a difference. I don't care. I don't like you. If something were to happen, I don't care. I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep. I just don't. The very same thing goes for black supremacists and every other supremacist group. I don't care one bit. If your view is that you view any other racial group of people, all these other people who are made in God's image, if you look at these people and view these people as less than because of inherent traits that they've inherited from their ancestry, right, from the specific land that your people historically have migrated from, if that makes you a better person than the next, I don't care. I don't like you. I don't care. You don't have my support. I don't care. It doesn't bother me one bit. But here's what I will say. If you're going to continually stoke the racial flames, right? For example, you stand in a black man's face, you repeatedly want to call him racial slurs, he's probably going to bop you in the mouth, okay? You do the very same thing to a white person, you want to continue to do that. If he has any gonads whatsoever, if he cares about his respect whatsoever, he might hit you in the mouth, okay? You do this kind of stuff, you're probably going to get hit in the mouth by the person that's listening to you, and that's just probably the way it's going to go, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's a man's man. He might hit you, okay? So if you do that kind of stuff, I don't particularly sympathize with you. But here's what I'll say. You think you can go on demonizing a whole group of people and then not get some response? Is that what you think is going to happen? Okay. You don't think you're going to get at least more sympathizers? I mean, especially if it's something that's completely unwarranted. Completely unwarranted. These aren't people who ascribe to a particular ideology. This is not like, I don't know, a certain racial group where the ideology that you ascribe to calls for you to dominate. Right? Explicitly calls for you to dominate. That explicitly calls for you to tell other religions, hey, that unless you're part of any of one of these two religious classes, then we're going to knock your heads off. If you don't believe in any religion, then we're going to cut your head off. And then if you are part of one of these two religions, you have to pay us something called the jizya tax. And so I could understand if they were actually ascribing to some particular ideology that made it apparent that they believed in something. Okay. But when you're talking about just a person being born with certain characteristics, meaning that person has violated you in some way by their mere existence, I don't care if you are a black supremacist or a white supremacist, whatever it is, if that's your particular view, you're an idiot. And if you tell that stuff to somebody and somebody puts their hands on you, I don't care. I don't care. I could care less. Yes, I am from Fresno, California, Brother Dwayne. Democrats never talk about mass shooting Democrats run cities because they don't care. It doesn't fit their agenda. But when Trump does, he's a racist. Yeah, definitely true. Couldn't. Okay. Says they should give a speedy trial if they're undoubtedly sure someone committed a mass shooting, then convict, then hang them at the noon of day. Perfect. See, I like that kind of plan. And see, but like I said, we have this whole Eighth Amendment thing where we need some clarity on the Eighth Amendment. I wish the courts had ruled that punishments need to fit the crime. And so therefore, when a person does a mass shooting, they do some mass killing, something like that to that effect, that the person gets a punishment fitting to the crime. I don't feel like free room and board for the next 30 years is going to be sufficient for the crime. I don't feel like even yard time is sufficient for the crime. You've done something like that. I think what you need to get is something equal to the crime that you committed. Something very, very slow and painful. And again, I'm only talking about sort of things happening to criminals, people who are rightfully convicted in this country. That's all I'm talking about, okay? Something like that. I think the punishment needs to fit the crime. I think we need Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court who understand that that should be the proper interpretation. Elect me for Supreme Court, and I'll get it taken care of for you. Yeah, firing squad would work just fine, Bruce. The firing squad would work just fine. I tell you. So yeah. But here's the thing. The nonsense. Again, I commented on Gentleman's Post. We'll see if I get some sort of response back. If he responds back, since I know him personally. We go to the same college anyway. But I'm very open about my political position. He had a very public post. I commented on it, and so the gentleman, if he ends up responding back, hey, we can get into it. But I tell you what, I watch people stoke racial flames by calling white people racist, by claiming that there was racial tension in this country, by claiming that they caused tension between police officers and civilians because you spew this idea that black people are being targeted by police. It doesn't matter that a black economist over at Harvard University by the name of Roland G. Fryer did a study on this sort of thing and said, black people are not actually shot more often by police. Now, they're more likely to be abused, and white people are more likely to be shot. I don't know which one of those you think is personally better, but he says, no, the narrative that says that black people are more likely to be shot by police is actually not true, especially when you factor in for all of the sort of variables, right? What sort of crime are you participating in, right? If you're being arrested for a tail light, it's far less likely you're probably going to be shot. If you're in violent crime, if you're charging at somebody with a car, you're beating up police officers with the radio. These are real things that happen where people were shot, by the way. Then you're probably going to be shot by the police. But people stoked the racial flames. They stoked flames between police officers and minorities, telling these minorities, be fearful of the police. The police are going to shoot you, in spite of the fact that there's no evidence to actually suggest it. No evidence to suggest it. I've seen statistics used. I took a stats class, by the way. It was a really difficult class. But I've seen statistics used, which said, when I got into the numbers were using people who were shot by accident by police. Like a black man sitting on his porch was shot by a stray bullet. And then they counted that as a racially motivated shooting. Counted that in the stats that said innocent black people, unarmed, are being shot by the police. This black man was shot by a stray bullet by a police officer encountering a different suspect, shot past him and hit the suspect. And they counted that as a racial police shooting. Nonsense. And you want to talk about people stoking racial flames? Okay. You want to continue telling black people that you need to be fearful of contact with police officers, in spite of the fact that the vast majority of contacts, the over 51 million contacts that happen in this country, don't end in a shooting? Okay. That's fine. If you want to take a couple thousand police shootings at most, out of 51 million police contacts, okay, and then you want to take 400 or so out of that 51 million contacts and then say that there's an epidemic of black people being shot by police? Nonsense. Sheer and utter nonsense. You want to talk about stoking racial flames? You're doing it, okay? And then it's happening in churches, no less. By the way, follow Political Blackout because Ernest keeps tackling it. I'm a member of Political Blackout. That's my politics page where usually I post some stuff. But when I do my own personal rants, I just do them on here, okay? So anyway, stop stoking racial flames. Stop it. Just stop it. You want to continue to paint an entire race as something without ascribing to any particular ideology, you're probably going to get a certain response. Okay. Now, again, there was a group of people that referred to immigration detention centers as concentration camps, and then that actually did get a response from a person. It did. Somebody tried to blow up a facility, claiming that it was a concentration camp. And a concentration camp is a place where you arrested people who you just didn't like, and that you put those people there, and they had no due process. And it's false, because the average time a person spends in one of these detention facilities is about 20 days, okay? About 20 days. Well, children at least. About 20 days. These people are taken to court. They have due process. They know why they're there. There does not need to be writs of habeas corpus filed. These people have due process. This is not even a case where Lincoln suspended habeas corpus for Confederate soldiers. It's not even a case of that. Not even a case of that, where they were kept in inhumane conditions. They didn't even have toilets. They were fecal matter everywhere. They were living in mud huts. It's not even that case. You just call it a concentration camp because people entered the country illegally, and somebody went and they acted on that. Are the Democrats to blame for that? Just asking, because I just want to figure out where the line is. Are Democrats is AOC to blame for that? Should we call for her impeachment? Should she be removed from office? Okay. Is that what we should do? I just hate that all these ignorant non-gun owners are trying to make laws that don't mean anything. Some people would tell me, will tell men that they can't tell a woman anything about her body. Exactly. So here's the thing. I own guns. I'm not out shooting anybody. Not out shooting anybody with any of my weapons. Okay. Somebody comes in here, it'll be a different story. You come in here into my house, I'm going to defend myself and my family, and let's just pray for you, because unlike other people who don't go to the shooting range, I do. I don't plan on missing anything. And so, I think there's a couple 100 million guns out on the streets of America. You plan on banning those? Okay. People are talking about, they're just talking about banning semi-automatic rifles, which vast majority of guns made today are semi-automatic rifles. And so what? Where are we going? We're just going to just the bolt action. Is that what we're doing? Going to bolt action muskets, revolvers? Because otherwise, we're talking about semi-automatic rifles, talking about semi-automatic weapons, semi-automatic pistols. Okay? And so after they talk about these mass shootings that take place, and they're going to come talk about pistols, and they're going to tell you that the vast majority of deaths that have occurred in this country have been by handguns. We need to then ban handguns. And just on and on and on we go. And then we end up with a situation like in the UK where they don't even get to have sharp knives. And chefs are coming out with statements against people having sharp knives, saying no one needs a sharp knife, and trying to get people to justify why you need a knife with a pointy end. Then they're saying, well, only chefs need those. You know, only chefs need a serrated edge. And then they're banning screwdrivers and scissors, because that's what happened. When you try to make me justify a reason why I need something, no, I don't need to justify why I need something. I have a fundamental right to have it. You need to justify why it is that I can't have it. And when you have hundreds of millions of gun owners out there who are not doing anything of the sort, especially not with their own weapon, especially not with the weapon that they own, when the vast majority, the hundreds of millions of gun owners out there are not doing anything like that, taking a gun away from me is not going to stop the person who wants to rob and shoot you and your family. That's not going to stop it. He doesn't care about the gun laws. You know why? Because murder is already illegal. It's already illegal to murder someone. And yet and still, guess what? If he wants to do so, he's going to do it. Okay? Do you guys remember we had anthrax poisonings that were going on? Now, just a quick trivia question. Is it legal for a citizen to possess anthrax? Was it legal at the time that they started sending it in the mail and killing folk? Is that something that's illegal? I say if we just ban anthrax, we can probably stop it. I'll go into the comment. Says, discrediting comment because we look different. Even though I actually agree because we look different, I can't rock with the sentiment. Jason, I don't understand the comment there. Says, any words to the people who would insist that racism can only be perpetrated by whites based on power dynamics? Yes, here's what I would say. The definition of racism going back to the 1800s has always been a belief in inherent inferiority. There is a sociologist who wrote an article a couple years back who tried to make that trash argument. But this idea that you can only be racist if you have power is utter nonsense. Racism is about an idea in the mind. Racism is about a belief. It's about a belief. And it's not about action. You can discriminate based on your idea of a person's inherent worth. You can discriminate upon that base. You can have racial discrimination, meaning that you discriminate based on the value that you hold for that person. Okay? But simply to be a racist is just to have an idea, a belief that a person is either greater or less than based on their race or nationality. And so it's utter nonsense. It's recent revisionism that says that you can't be racist unless you are a majority in the country. And then I don't know if that's in the country or in the state, because, for example, in California, I guess then we can only call Latinos racist, for example. So I don't particularly understand how that reasoning works, but it's trash. Yes, I'm responsible gun owner. I own them. I know how to use them. I have permits. I won't hesitate to protect myself, protecting property and loved ones. Love it. It says, come get them, but they will be hot and empty when they get them. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yes, so yeah, racial theorists have come up with this idea, and this is what you call critical race theory. Critical race theory is similar to critical theory, and it basically just says this is a Marxist ideology. And so critical theory as a whole just says that whatever people in power, these are the only people who can be oppressors. And then they adopted and turned it into critical race theory, right? And critical race theory then it just says, well, only people who are in the racial majority can be racist. And that's just sheer and utter nonsense. Any person can believe, as Brother Julius said, any person can believe in racial superiority. I know all sorts of black supremacists. I know all sorts of them. I sat outside of an event one time. My friend Alex, he hosts these events they call Common Ground. my friend Alex Miles. So he hosts these events, and they're basically their discussions. He gets the community together. We have these live discussions. After this discussion, not with Alex, but with some of the people who were at this discussion, they were talking about, at the end of it, they were talking about, well, white people, they actually, white people, they came from dogs. Somebody told me, I was like, and this is what somebody told me. They said, well, white people, this is why they smell like dogs when they get wet. This is what the person said. I didn't say this. This is what the person said. So they talk about white people coming from animals, and white people coming from, they're being dogs. White people have tails, and so you can believe in the inherent inferiority of a person, or the superiority of your specific racial group, or even of another racial group, and you don't have to have a single shred of power. It is an idea. It's a belief, and this is a belief of inherent superiority or inferiority. Okay, you can discriminate on the basis of race. Okay, and then by that you would have to have the means to be able to discriminate. So discriminate in what fashion? Okay, so maybe I don't want white people in my house. That will be racial discrimination, right? Because I've set up a criteria for which acts as a screen to screen people of whatever category. So that's a discrimination, and my way of doing so is racial. Okay, I just brought in the race. Any person can be a racist. Any person can believe that they are better than another group. Okay, anybody can believe that. Doesn't matter if there's only one of you in the country. Okay, you can believe that you are better than the majority of the people in the country. How can I get involved in this kind of thing? I love this. Well, what thing? What thing you talk about, Dwayne? What thing in particular? I love you guys. You guys are funny. But listen, we're gonna need to. And I'm hoping that the brother who posted this comment sees this. I would love a dialogue on this sort of thing. I would love to go back and revisit some of the issues in some of the issues that took place right here in this country, where I watched the person I'm talking about personally speak on these issues in a racially divisive fashion. And when I said something back then, you know what they called me? Not him particularly, but people watching and people who, when I've commented on these things, I've been called a race traitor. Why? Why am I called a race traitor? Because again, to them, we should be having racially segregated ideas. I should have a particular viewpoint because of my skin color, not because of critical thinking, not because I sat back and I've done my research and my homework, not because I've studied critical race theory or critical theory, even as far as it relates to international politics and Marxism, not because of that, but I should have a particular view based on my skin color. And people will be watching and observing these conversations and tell me that I have to have a view because of my race. And then these very same people will talk to me about how we have racism in this country. Do you hear yourself? You want me to say things based on my race and agree with people simply because we are part of the same race. And then you want to lecture me on a racial divide in the country? We can't even come together around good ideas. I can't agree with somebody who has a good idea or a good thesis. I can't agree with somebody who has a good plan for something. I can't, let me give you a prime example. I cannot agree, according to his post, I cannot agree with the president's economic policy. I cannot agree with his foreign policy. If I support this president, according to him, I'm a coward and a racist. And then he goes on to lecture people about love and coming together. Now, you just called me a coward. You just told me that I have to agree with you, or I'm in this class over here. And you talk about love and unity. Do you hear yourself? I got to think a certain way because of my skin color. This is what the arguments are. I got to think a certain way because of my skin color. I have to vote the way you do, right? If I don't, I'm a coward. And I'm the unloving one. I'm the one that this is, again, this is just another topic. Here's why I can't stand the usage, the incorrect usage, the factually incorrect usage of the word bigot. You know what a bigot is? A bigot is somebody who's intolerant to other people's views. I didn't make that up. You can look it up yourself. A bigot is a person who's intolerant towards the views of another person. What do you call it when you want to name call me because I have a different political position than you? You can call me a coward. You can be intolerant in that fashion. You can call me a separatist, tell me that I'm causing a divide here because I have a different political viewpoint than you. This is love and unity. You can't be serious. Can't be serious. Oh, Dwayne, Oh yeah, Dwayne, you inbox me, man. Hey, we can definitely work something out, brother. Inbox me, my inbox is open. If you guys send me inboxes, you're gonna have to let me know that you sent me an inbox. I know, brother Julius, I know you know that because notifications get turned off. Because usually when I make posts like this, I mean, I've gotten all sorts of threats and things in the past. I don't particularly care because unlike what they want, I have guns. So it doesn't matter that people want to threaten me because I'm just going to ask you to do it. You know, where I'm from, where I grew up, you know, threats or comments, so it doesn't actually bother me one bit. That you know, if you decide to make a threat, I sleep the same. I sleep just fine. So if you inbox me, leave a comment when I post, let me know that you sent me an inbox, and then so I know to check it. In any case, but yeah, I hope the brother sees this. If you see this, you know who you are. If you see this, let me know. We can get together for a dialogue. It can be a personal one-on-one. We can do one live. I'm hoping to discuss the issues. I'm hoping to get into the specifics. I'm hoping that what I can do is I can pull out the Michael Brown grand jury report. We can get into it. And then I can ask you questions about whether or not you believe you caused a racial divide in this country by attacking an entire ethnic group of people, by attacking an entire organization like the police force, for example, and calling them racist for what it is they do, right? That you attacked a person, an individual, that you slandered this person's character, which ended up being factually on his side. All of the witnesses said the same thing. The eyewitnesses testified to the same thing. I read the grand jury testimony myself. I read the report. I read the statement from witness 102. I read how witnesses said that they lied about seeing the event because they wanted to feel a part of something, because they wanted to support their people. Okay? So people said and gave a certain narrative to an event that caused a racial divide in this country, and you supported it. I saw you at church. I saw you at church with your hands up. I saw the whole church with hands up, don't shoot, and no retraction came. But you stirred up racial divide in the country. You're condemning it, but you caused it. And so if you see the video, reach out. Let's talk. Chop it up. Let's talk. Okay. This is the worst part. If you disagree with policy, then you are an accessory to these mass murders. That's stupid. Exactly. And that is what is called the guilt by association fallacy. Okay? If this person over here supports this idea, and this person is connected to this person, if I'm connected to this person right here in the middle, I automatically support this person over here. Guilt by association fallacy. It's a fallacy. I don't support people going to shoot up malls and Walmarts. I don't support that whatsoever. I don't support white supremacists in any way, shape, or fashion. I could particularly care less about them. I don't care about their very existence. Pray for their repentance. I hope that they really sincerely turn, and I pray that they sincerely turn and that they drop the nonsense. But don't tell me I support white supremacists because of who I voted for. The person that I voted for certainly isn't saying that. Okay? They're not saying that. I didn't put him up there because he said he was going to help with mass shootings. That wasn't my point. I said, you know what? I have two options. We have the Democratic nominee. We have the Republican nominee. Okay? I didn't agree with Hillary Clinton on squat. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing. And so, if I want to be on the right side, I gotta vote the way you tell me to. Okay? Yeah, don't do it. So, here's the thing. I'm done. 43 minutes of my rant. You folks have a good day. I hope the brother who posted that sees this stuff right here. I'm going to send him a message and let him know. And I'm going to see if we can't get some dialogue going. You folks have a good day. Much love. Political blackout.